Elara lived a life perfectly calibrated by screens and deadlines. Her apartment was minimalist, her job prestigious, and her social life a calendar of carefully managed events. Yet beneath the polished surface, a dull ache persisted, a sense of severance from something real. This feeling peaked one damp Tuesday when she found an old, tattered box tucked away in her attic. Inside, among dried flowers and childhood drawings, was a small, hand-drawn map. It wasn't a map of a city or a known hiking trail. It was a cryptic sketch of winding rivers, 3 oddly shaped stones, and a phrase, "Where the willow weeps, the heart remembers." The map belonged to her grandfather, a quiet man who was an expert in getting wonderfully lost. He had passed away years ago, and Elara hadn't thought of his whimsical drawings in over a decade. Driven by an impulse she couldn't explain, she took a week off work, packed a worn backpack, and drove south, aiming for the general region where she grew up, a place she'd deliberately avoided since leaving for college. The lost path was literal. Following her grandfather's first clue, she ditched the asphalt roads for a muddy, overgrown track barely visible beneath a canopy of ancient oaks. After an hour, the track dissolved entirely into wilderness. Her expensive hiking boots were slick with mud, her city-honed patience was wearing thin, and her phone had 0 signal. Panic began to set in. She was truly lost, far from the security of her perfectly scheduled life. Sinking onto a moss-covered log, she pulled out the map again, exasperated. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, crumpling the paper. She smoothed it out immediately, noticing the ink looked faint. She realized the paper wasn't meant to be read with logical coordinates. It was an instruction manual for the soul. She stood up and closed her eyes, trying to remember the scents and sounds of this forest from childhood trips with her grandfather. The map pointed toward a song of stone. She listened. She heard the low, steady rush of moving water. She followed the sound, stepping over fallen timber and through thickets of fern. The rushing sound led her to a small, secluded river, and there, partially submerged, were the 3 oddly shaped stones from the drawing. Next to them stood a massive old willow tree, its branches trailing into the water like long, green braids. "Where the willow weeps, the heart remembers." A sudden clarity washed over her. She followed the riverbank past the willow, and there, perfectly preserved, was the mossy, stone-lined path her grandfather used to call the rabbit trail. It was hidden in plain sight, a path intended only for those who truly stopped looking and started remembering. She followed the rabbit trail for only a few minutes before the trees opened up onto a clearing. In the center sat the small, weathered cottage she had known as a child. But it wasn't empty. Smoke curled gently from the chimney, and a familiar scent of baking apple pie hung in the air. As she stepped into the clearing, the front door swung open. Standing there was her older brother, Jonah, whom she hadn't spoken to in 3 years since their last heated argument about her moving so far away. He looked older, his hair dusted with gray, but his eyes were the same kind, worried eyes she remembered. A smile, slow and genuine, spread across his face. "I knew you'd find it, Elara," he said, stepping down from the porch. "Grandpa always said that path only reveals itself when you're done running." He didn't wait for her reply. He simply embraced her. A hug that felt less like 2 people meeting after a long time and more like 2 halves finally making a whole. As they stood there, the scent of pie and pine needles filling the air, Elara realized the lost path didn't lead her back to a structure, but back to the connection she had consciously forgotten. She was home.